Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. Welcome. How are you doing?
Good. And you're Ryan.
I am doing good as well. I have done that, haven't I? When I did an introduction and I did an elongated hello, and it went on for ages.
We've done a lot of different introductions.
It always says it to the listening people.
Remember when we did Decision to Leave and I did the whole gag about, it's the first episode, right?
It's the first episode.
I'll tell you right now, I've been waiting to do that for an embarrassingly long time.
He's been waiting a long time to tell every listening person what podcast they're listening to, what it's about, and what we're doing today. So you better not wait any longer, Bartek.
This is finally it. I can finally reveal what we've been doing for 400 episodes prior. We've been doing a podcast called Spit and Polish Presents, and for little more than 200 of those, we've been doing Pictures Powwow specifically. This is the podcast where we cover a movie that has been recommended by either myself one week, the following week by Ryan, and the following week after that, the listening people. That's what this one is, where a film gets recommended and we have a discussion/review about it.
A film could be new to us. It could be old to us. It could be something that we grew up with. It could be something that has never crossed us before, and we give it a good old chin wag in discussion. And last episode was our 400th.
Mm-hmm.
We did a Paul Giamatti film, The Nanny Diaries, and I was joined by my wife, who was the person, in a way, who recommended it, even though it was a my recommendation episode. But we had to because it was such our podcast movie.
Yeah, that's kind of been the case with the last two times we had her on. Right? Well, we'd all seen Juno, but enough said, only she'd seen it.
So we are here now to talk about a film that my wife actually did recommend wholeheartedly.
At the end of last
episode. Knows that it's the year of musicals.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone except me has recommended musicals for this podcast this year, and wait until we come back around to me and I still don't pick one. But we are doing a musical, Repo, the Genetic Opera from 2008, starring many interesting cast members, people who are very much theatre actors that are bringing this to life to the movies.
Musicians too.
Some musical people and just character actor types. Anthony Stewart Head is best known for being in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but he's one of those British actors that's been in a ton of things. And of course, Paris Hilton is in this. Repo the Genetic Opera, if had to be described, it's clearly an opera in the greatest sense of the word. Most, if not all, of the dialogue is given to you through song or through some sort of musicality to it. There's music always playing in this film, and if it isn't, it's very dramatic. It's like, oh, we're not doing music. There's no music here.
It wasn't quite the same as The Wall or Tommy, but it did have like a similar amount of lack of non-musical dialogue.
Different era as well. The Wall and Tommy were the 70s. It was the UK.
This was the first Obama year.
This is from one of the directors.
When he got elected.
Sorry. Yes, this is from an era where Saw was popular, produced by the same people who did Saw, directed by one of the directors of the Saw franchise.
The sequels, I think it said.
Yes, and directed many. But this film is about a world in which organ failure has become an issue or became an issue. People were dying left and right, but thankfully the world was saved because one capitalist decided that they could make organs and give them to the people, but at a cost, of course, and you have to sign a contract and you have to make your repayments, and if you don't, a repo man will come and take your organs by force. And that's the world, that's the setup. But this is really a story about blood feuds and rivalries, and one girl in the center of it all who's going to discover that perhaps her father is not the nicest man in the world itself. Perhaps he's not a noble scientist who's trying to cure her of her blood disease. Maybe there's a lot more going on.
And maybe that guy who's in charge of basically the entire setting isn't really that nice, despite how nice he is to her.
Of course, and that is what I will say. If you have not seen Repo the Genetic Opera, give it a watch for yourself if you do not want to be spoiled on things. The music style is very punky and rock and rolly and, thrashy, but it also has a classical music feel and opera feel, of course. Very Italian in this. There's whole sections where they're just singing and speaking in Italian. So please go and check this out for yourself. This is very much a cult film, low budget, but you can tell that the drive and ambition is behind that. There's a clear dream trying to be brought to life.
When I was watching this film, I was like, oh, I bet I went to university with a bunch of people that love this film.
That's a great way to put it. So, have you seen or heard of Repo the Genetic Opera?
I don't think I'd even heard of it, no.
Nothing.
No. Last night, we were hanging out yesterday, guys, just a little secret. I even asked you at the end, like, oh, what was the film we're doing tomorrow again?
So, I have seen this before. I own this on DVD. It's an interesting film. My sister is a big fan of this type of music, and it's just this general vibe, the goth type thing, and just this concept. And there's even, I'm pretty sure there's a movie a couple years later that's a dramatic film that has a similar idea. It's not a musical, it's just a similar idea that no one watched, where, organ failure world, and there's repo men, and it's just an interesting concept. It's an interesting dystopia to live in, and I'm always up for watching musicals, especially if they're newer ones that hit upon that certain texture of musicals that I like. I like your Rocky Horror Picture Show. I like your Little Shop of Horrors. I like every decade, every era has this type of musical. This type of musical that draws certain fans.
We on certain movie nights, the two separate ones, we've watched the Reaper Madness the musical.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like something you would have shown on one of those nights.
Yes, Reefer Madness, the movie musical, and yeah, that's exactly it. There's just certain types of musicals that I vibe with, and this is one that I definitely have enjoyed over the years. I've watched it a handful of times. I mainly listen to the soundtrack that's available online, and there's certain songs that didn't make it into the movie because of pacing, and then certain songs are longer on the soundtrack than they are in the movie, as is always the case, or often the case.
I think in the ending credits they had like a medley of some of the songs from the film, and I think there was like one or two that weren't there.
Yeah, but I have seen it. I've enjoyed this. It's not one of my absolute favorites, but it's a put it on late at night type movie. Oh, we're gonna put this on a Friday night with the gang of friends and see who hates it, who loves it, who's going to be singing along, who's going to be rolling their eyes. I appreciate with Repo the Genetic Opera, to get into some thoughts, that there is such a clear passion and vision for what this is supposed to be. There's just a certain aesthetic, there's a certain style, there's just a certain attitude within what the direction gives us and the actors' performances and the lyrics themselves. So I commend it for just swinging for the fences, even with a low budget and with obvious restrictions. This isn't as high end as something as Little Shop of Horrors or whatnot, but it definitely has that grungy feel of something like a Rocky Horror, where Rocky Horror, they shot in a fancy castle, but there's a lot of cutting corners for that film too, and that's a part of the charm of that and of this in my eyes. So what did you think of Repo?
Yeah, you've touched on a couple of things there that I also feel similarly about. Like the storytelling, the establishment of the world, the look of it, it's like all just absolutely stellar. I liked this film quite a bit. I don't love it. And you mentioned before that, this is a film that you'd like to put on with a group of people. I almost feel like I haven't properly watched it until I do kind of watch it with a few other people. It's not really the type of film that I feel like I would go out of my way to watch it on my own, but yeah, there was a lot of things I liked about this film. There were a couple of songs and characters, like I was all about all of their scenes. When the film ended, because it's like a almost straightforward 90 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the world building that we were given at the beginning and throughout the film was so strong that I almost feel like, oh man, there's so much more you could tell with this world.
And they tease you with that too at the end as
Yeah.
well, with Paris Hilton getting to be in charge of things, and they're like, this corporation, they have more stories. It's like, yay, hey, capitalism didn't die,
Yeah.
huzzah.
You mentioned before there's a lot of interesting people in this one. I don't think I was really familiar with any of them. Like, I've seen, growing up, I watched the first 3 Spy Kids films in the cinema, but I don't remember that much about them. I know that the main girl in this is the main girl in
Mm-hmm.
those. And I remember hearing about Paris Hilton in the 2000s quite a bit.
Oh man, we'll talk about her in a bit. No, the casting is interesting.
I read a little bit of trivia about it, and apparently, like, at the time, a lot of the casting decisions in this were like, what are you doing?
Yes, there's a lot of head scratching. Anthony Stewart Head makes a lot of obvious sense. He was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, cult classics show, but also like mainstream success. There was a musical episode of that series that showed off he could sing. So
Okay.
bringing him over into this would bring an audience that would like something in this kind of vein. Hence my sister. My sister's a big Buffy fan. Oh, I'm going to
Listen
watch
to our
this.
Buffy episode.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to watch this musical about, creepy gothic Victorian era futurism, like nonsense, cool, violent opera where people are just ripping out organs while merrily singing. And Anthony Stewart Head is one of the leads. While in Buffy, he's a supporting character. Like, he's in every episode, but he's never essential. Like, he's never the guy in that show.
Mm-hmm.
And you get people like who played the guy who plays Rotti Largo, Paul Savino. He was in Goodfellas. He was the head of their gang, like the head of their family.
Right,
He's the one that
yeah.
got sent to prison, and he's chopping up the onions real fine with a razor. And he's the one that they like fuck over in court. Like he's great in that movie.
I've only
And
seen that
it's
film
so,
once, but I think I remember.
and
yeah.
it's so interesting to see him in something like this, where you look at someone like him as an actor, like, yes, he's well known for mob boss roles, but he was like a very, serious performer. You didn't even know he could sing, and here he is hamming it up. You can tell he's having the time of his life with this movie.
This was a completely different performance, but I was thinking a lot about the I forgot the actor's name, but the guy that played Max Bialystock in The Producers.
Oh yes. In the original,
Yeah, that we did a couple of years ago. Like, it's similar look, obviously, but yeah, just like the really hamming it up, the performance that this film kind of needs.
Yes, and there's one or two other little players, like you mentioned. Our lead was also one of the leads in Spy Kids, so that's kind of a bit of fun there. And Paris Hilton, stunt casting, some may have said, but reading the trivia and just even watching the film, I would say that she's easily one of the best performances in this movie. She's so fun. She knows exactly what this is. She knows exactly what it needs.
You mentioned last week when Rachel recommended this film, like, oh, and Paris Hilton's in it, and I didn't say anything, but I was like, oh, was she an actress?
Yes, she's a singer. She's an actress, singer. She's a reality star. She's a spoiled brat. She's the, I guess, what the epitome of this trend now of your Kardashians, your so on and so forth, where
influencer ahead of her time kind of thing.
Someone who is inherited fame and fortune because she's a Hilton.
Hotel.
Yes, and she got famous because of a sex tape that leaked, a night in Paris, that's the thing. And then she had a reality show, and then she tried to do music, and she tried to do movies, and she had her brand where she was like ditzy blonde who says it's so hot. Then to have her in this, all of that baggage was brought in. They didn't want to cut, like, the
I read that trivia point.
They didn't want to cast her because it's like, come on.
The directors, like, I think the trivia said, vehemently refused to even consider
But then
her.
She came in and she fucking nailed it, because she's basically playing like a twisted version of her persona that she has in the public eye, of like the spoiled rich girl who's addicted to drugs and plastic surgeries and all of that. And she's using her singing career to be in a musical. And she was easily one of the best performances and characters in this for me. I just smile from ear to ear that one of the trivia points is most of her costumes in this were just things that she wears. They were her own
Oh, that's fun.
pieces of wardrobe, and I'm like watching her in like the corset with the fishnets and like the wigs and this, and I'm like, yeah, she would wear those type of things. Or the film was running out of money, so they needed 50 grand to film some more of the things. So she just hosted a DJ session and raised 50 grand that one night because she's a name, she has influence.
Yeah.
So she was passionate about the movie, and that's again the thing I love about this is everyone, big or small, seems really passionate about making this schlocky musical that, it's not going to rival any of like the big players, but in a way you're going to garner loyalty in the viewers who do like it because it has that scrappy charm.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of it. I like a lot of the music of it. I like a lot of the character stuff. But tell us a bit more about your impressions on it or things that you want to discuss about it.
Sure. So the film has a lot of like comic book paneling in it that gives us backstory of the characters. Those are really really good looking. It feels like genuine like Western kind of comic. And they provide us with like just the right amount of information that you need so that when it cuts back to the film, it's like, okay, I can see, what all of that was in service to, and everything that happens in the film, like it perfectly complemented.
And they front load you with it. This is the prologue, this is the world, and now we're into the thing. And then we're going to stop for a moment and tell you Nathan's story, or Rotty's story, or Mag's story, and you're kind of keen to know whose story are we going to get after a certain point. Like who's the one worthy of stories? Like especially when you get to Mag, like Blind Mag, you're like, oh, I guess she's an important player in this because she's just been in the background of the whole entire movie, like literally just on a screen in the background, floating up in the sky.
The celebrity on the TV, the I'll buy that for $1. But
yes,
not quite as silly.
the opera star that everyone clamors for, the voice and the eyes of Jinko. So yeah, the comic strip panels work in the movie's favor. I like the the retelling of it too with each character. Like we keep coming back to those specific panels of like, here's now from this character's point of view of what went on, and it just keeps layering and layering what is happening here. Where the pitch is easy enough, like, oh, the dad lost the mother in childbirth because he accidentally killed her because he wasn't good enough of a scientist and so on. Now he's raising the daughter on his own and he's trying to protect her from the world. He's overprotective. That's a story. That's enough. No. We're gonna have the old boy for the old love of the wife who's
the head of the megacorp.
Yeah, who's like the king of the world, poisoned her because he's that spiteful.
Yep, and then Blind Mag was like her best friend who made a promise to her that she thought she couldn't keep because the promise was like, oh, if my daughter is alive, but the daughter's dead, but she's not. She's the main character of the movie.
Yep, and everyone is a slave to Jinko. That's what the backstories keep going on about. Like, here's why this person is serving Jinko. Like, would Nathan be doing these things? No, but you also see throughout the movie that he likes it as well. He likes being the Repo Man persona. He has a different voice. He sings and dances. He puppeteers corpses for
Feels
fun.
like a different character, yeah.
Yes. So I really, really love that. So what did you think of the songs and the music style overall?
It was all very catchy, but my favorite ones were all the ones by the Grave Robber.
Oh,
I really liked his songs, the sort of pace to them. Like, there's a lot of repetition going on. Like, I found all of that really catchy.
Yes, one of the creators of this musical. So
there
he
you go.
gives himself the best songs. Everyone,
the creator of like the theater. Okay,
yep.
I didn't know that.
Yes. He played the Repo Man, hence he is actually 6'6". Like that's described in the song at the very beginning. He's 6'6".
It's secretly describing that person's height.
Yes, because he's incredibly tall, if you noticed, and he played the Reaper Man in the intro credit, like in the introduction, and then it's Anthony Stewart Head for the rest of it.
Oh, that's cool.
But yes, everyone, the iconic song of this is the Zydrate song, where Amber Sweet is coming in and she wants a Zydrate, and then
Is that the little glass vial?
yes,
Oh,
that's the song that everyone loves
well,
from
fuck. Then
this.
I'm a normie because I think that was my favorite song.
Bartek's a fucking normie. The Grave Robber's fun. It's
Hmm.
because he's amoral. He doesn't really give a shit, but also he's a voice. He's a Greek chorus
Yeah.
for us. And he's just Mr. How will this all go? Probably blood being shed. Oh well. Another day in the life. Like that's just his attitude about everything. Oh, it's just another day.
Yeah, he's not a good guy in the eyes of the big megacorp, but they also don't catch him.
Yeah, the Zydrate song is iconic. I love it too. It's a banger. It just slaps, and you get a lot of fun like lyrics out of it, and just the overlapping and
Yeah.
the repetition.
And it naturally has like conversations happening in the song, which a lot of the movie does too. To be
You
fair, but
you
yeah,
you tend to like those a lot in the musicals that we've done, like when Doctor Horrible had a lot of that too, where
I
they
think I was
kind of
also a normie in
overlap.
that one. I think I was like, oh, that's my favorite. It's like, oh, that's my sister's favorite song.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I always love Nathan's songs. I love the Repo Man songs
Mm.
himself. I love Anthony Stewart Head at the best of times, but I think he's got the best voice. I love his voice, and I like how you will have within the same song it go from melancholy, tragic, sad, slow to super angry, aggressive, fast, short, loud music. Like all of it gets mixed together like that.
Mm.
I also appreciate with the Grave Robber and with Nathan, and like with all of them, basically, they all have their moments within their songs of showmanship. Like they are performing. This is us having a little song and dance. Like Nathan singing to his Repo Man helmet while he's in his little morgue running around freaking out the guy that he's got tied up, and all of that is just absolutely delightful, and I appreciate that. Another song I actually really like is I like the Rotti song where he's talking about how how he's going to get his revenge on them all. Like he's in his car and he's looking
Mm.
directly at us, like he's talking to us, and
Yeah,
he's just like,
yeah.
I am so jazzed right now that my plan is going to work, and like he is my story, and he never suspected to, like he never looked at the man who wrote his checks, and he's like just like some of the singing is just him laughing evilly, and I just
Mm.
love that. I was
I
just
think
like,
this
good for you, man.
I think this might be a hard film for me. Like, do you remember that song? Because
They all
like
bleed
all
together.
all of it is kind of singing, so it's more like just do you remember that scene where this happened and it was a
Mm-hmm.
stunning song?
Yes, exactly. But I appreciate him as as an antagonist and how he was the one that broke the fourth wall a
He
lot.
was, he was genuinely charismatic when he was, being like that. I'm a good guy. You're not. You technically we own you, kind of thing. Oh, just kidding. Like there were points where I'm like, oh, this guy. I could kind of see a version of this film where you are spinning him as the good guy, as in a propaganda way.
Oh yeah, and it's propaganda's all over the movie. Above her house is this
Mm.
floating monument of advertisements and just praise, and this evil media corporation of news just cycling out like, yes, I got my new organs and I feel great. That's news that's happening right
Yes,
now, and it's
yes.
just disgusting this world of carnival like decadence, because that's the thing about like this gene co. You're expecting, oh, they're going to be like rich and fancy, but they're just like these carnival barkers. it's
Yeah.
it's this
A lot
thing.
of the scenes with his kids, especially, it's like, oh, they're just so amoral and disgusting in like a literal way.
I thought your favorite character was going to be Parvi, the one who wears faces.
No, he was cool.
he
Yeah.
was he was so happy at the end with his big
Yeah.
happy face.
Both of the sons were fun, yeah.
They were fun. Luigi, and how he'll find a hole and fuck it, and then he just stabs her. Yeah, lots of great songs here. So with the story itself, so we're walking in. This is a musical. We're talking about the music. We're talking about how this is told primarily through song. But what did you think of like the story stuff, like the plot machinations and reveals, and how they were aided or maybe halted by the use of it being told through song?
Hmm. Um, no, I think it was relatively complimentary. I don't think it was held back all that much. Um, I guess I mentioned before, like the film felt like it kind of flew by so quickly, and there were so many things like that didn't get explored. I didn't really mean that too much as like a negative, but yeah, the whole focus on the daughter. Yeah, I didn't especially love or hate her. I thought she was fine in it.
She has the worst songs. That's my point of view.
I guess I wasn't
I
looking too
find
closely at that part, but
I
yeah.
find it very difficult with her because I just do not like her songs for the most part. I am totally on board with the music in this, but that fucking 17 song that she sings in the bedroom where she's rocking around like Avril
Is that the
Lavigne.
one where she gets slapped at the end?
Yeah, probably. But she has like a complete outfit change, and there's like a punk rocker in the corner of her bedroom, and the teddy bears are dancing around, and I'm like, it's now Avril Lavigne type thing, and I'm like,
I guess for me, it was just like the very typical thing in any film that has like a wacky, or not wacky, but like over the top kind of cast. It's like, oh well, the main character is usually the least interesting part.
Yes, and it's the teen girl who's trying to rebel, but she's also so much of a loser. And like her version of rebelling is the Avril Lavigne power ballad type song, and I'm like, I just don't like it. Give me more of Nathan in the boardroom slicing and dicing and talking about how he's an artist, and you get
I thought she was fine, but it's like, oh, I want to see a bit more of him.
yes, it's a thing in which they have to make her a fully fledged character because the story's about her. She goes on a journey, and everyone's trying to get at her in some way, shape, or form. Her father's using her. Everyone's using and abusing her. So she has to come out at the end of this as her own person. And so you have to have some stuff. But just musically speaking, her songs are my least favorite consistently throughout the thing. It's not even that the actress is a bad singer or anything. It's just the style of it. I'm like, I get it. You're trying to cater to music, like in the sound, what is appropriate to each character. Like each character has their own specific sound. Hence, whenever we're with Rotti's family, the Lagos, they have a very Italian sound. Like everything's very bombastic and loud and theatrical and kind of humorous. Like the mark it up scene is very funny, where they're just carving out organs and marking it up and arguing.
That one is another one with really good back and forth.
Yes. I like how Paris Hilton, Amber Sweet, just leaves that at the very beginning. She's like, I'm here, and then she's like, fuck it, I'm just leaving, and then the two brothers just have a battle of lyrics against each other, and it's like, oh, she's just gone. She just went away. She's like, I'm done with this. I've said my part, and then she left. Goodbye, Amber. What did you feel about Nathan and the ongoing story reveals of him and what he was all about? Because we know from pretty early on that he's having to live the double life of the concerned father, but he goes out at night to murder people.
No, I really liked how much of a distinct presence he was in the film. Like all of the scenes where he's talking to his daughter as the concerned father. Like that performance, straight up feels like it's out of a film that isn't this stylistic. It's very normal, and that contrasts really well with when he is at his job, the Repo Man, and doing all these crazy things. And at the end, when he's finally confronting his boss, yeah, he's a really good presence.
I liked when they blurred the lines of it too. He would do his Repo Man voice and the Nathan voice, and he would sing both of them throughout a song, and him wrestling with his morality or what little he has to begin with, and all of this guilt he holds over perhaps having killed his wife, but then realizing that that's not a good enough justification for the horrible things he's done. Not just the Repo Manning, but keeping his daughter as a prisoner because it makes him feel better that he has something left of his wife, and that's just not a good enough excuse.
Really ripping off Bubble Boy there.
Yeah, it's really ripping off Bubble Boy. If she was
spoilers for Bubble Boy, guys. Sorry.
Spoilers for Bubble Boy. Did you really think of Bubble Boy during this? I did.
No, only just now.
I've thought about Bubble Boy all my life. I've
thought about it
Zach
since we covered
Galifianakis is in that movie. Everyone go
Zach.
back. We all loved Zach.
Let's do more Zach films.
If he was here in this movie, who would he play?
I thought you meant in the room.
If he was with us in the room, you look like him, so...
I used to get compared to him when I was a teenager.
There we are.
That was my celeb
That was
look-like.
when he was relevant.
Now I'm Jack. Now I'm Jack Black.
Jack's never stopped being relevant, so there you are.
I know. I can't believe how many kids reference School of Rock to me.
School of Rock's a popular film. The Kung Fu Pandas are popular movies, just saying. But I was with.
Oh, you asked who Jake would play in this? I could see him as the grave robber.
Who's Zach Galifianakis?
Did I say Jake?
Yes, I don't know who Jake is.
Gyllenhaal.
Oh, you want Gyllenhaal in this? Sure.
You asked me who would he play in this.
I play it back. I asked who would Zach play. I said if Zach was in this, and you're like the room with us, and I'm like no. If Zach Galifianakis was in this, who would he play? And why is it Luigi?
Oh, we were talking about Zach. I was thinking of Jake Gyllenhaal.
Wow, Bartek.
You said Zach. You said Zach Galifianakis, and I said Jake.
And then you were like, I look like Zach Galifianakis as a teen. See, so unless you're thinking everyone as a teen said that you look like Jake Gyllenhaal.
No, that's what I said. Yeah.
Wow.
Now I get compared to Zach.
Bartek is falling apart.
Start the episode again.
Never starting ever again. Sorry, we're stuck in the loop now.
Every episode now will start with us mid-conversation.
Now, what are other things that you want to discuss or break apart with Repo?
I actually don't know.
You don't know? No. Nothing else of note or long-lasting impression or something else within the narrative or the filmmaking or music that you feel worthy of discussion? Well, was this just too much of a rip-roaring good time to think about?
It was a good time. I guess there was just so much going on that it almost justified, like, I need to really see this again to take in everything. Like, by the end, I was like, oh man, Paris Hilton's doing a really good job. And I think throughout the film, I wasn't really giving it that much appreciation. Not that I really have that much of a prior opinion of her or anything like that, but it's like, oh wow, I should have been paying more attention to, what this actress was doing throughout the film.
Amber's face fell off at the end.
Yeah.
Very funny. Very funny scene. Very awesome. No ego from Paris Hilton. Can you imagine pitching that to someone of that, reputation, of someone who, in the media, the public eye, heck, even they didn't want her in this movie, she had a certain image, and she's willing to come in and be like, yeah, I'm going to play a drug addict socialite who gets so much plastic surgery that my fucking face falls off.
That notion really complements the whole trivia point about how she was fighting so strongly to audition for this. It's like, oh, this doesn't feel like a film that you would fight for the, the huge recognition of it. It does feel like a, more of an artistic endeavor.
There's always those type of performances or movies or roles that gives you a little bit more respect for someone that you never thought you would have. And this is definitely an example of that, where I was there at the time. Paris Hilton was a punching bag, a joke, someone that you would loathe. She's a rich bitch, that type of thing. She's got no discernible talent, but she's relevant because she's of money. And then she actually does something like this, and it's a real case of, she needs to be in projects that know how to use her, or ones that she's actually passionate about. And that's good. Like, okay, because it's easy to basically look at certain people and just say they have no value, so why should we invest in anything? But the people are people, and everyone has their little thing going on. And like, again, this movie's filled with cast who have proven themselves, and yet most of them I haven't seen do something like this before. Like, I
guess in that regard, it's kind of reminding me of how we defend Oscar and Sylvester Stallone in that.
Yeah. No, that's a good example. Or even like in this case too, we've done so many movies over the years in which a classic actor or like a very serious actor does something so over the top and just funny. Hence, Paul Giamatti is always our go-to guy. Paul Sorvino's in here, and he's hamming it up. He's doing like this venomous performance. He's really, really laying into the material. When he is dying at the end of this, and he's calling all of his children worthless and pathetic, and don't even come near me, you disgust me. I believed it.
Like
I was like,
he's
man,
basically been saying it all film.
yeah, but when he's dying in his last breath, he's like, I fucking won, though.
He's dying as he lived. Yeah.
Yes, and like everyone's a clown. Like I saved the world, and I get nothing in return. You all fucking vultures, and you all suck. And I'm like, it's one of those great antagonists where you loathe them, you despise them, they suck. They've made the world worse. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what, buddy? Get your revenge plan out there. You know, keep steamrolling forward. Everyone does suck. I agree. They all are bad. I like the scene when he's in the mirror and he's putting on his toupee. He's putting on the makeup over his sore, and then he walks out, and just Paris Hilton's coming in, just being a hot bag of air, like, oh, and all of his children, all of this stuff, all these outside forces are coming in. It's like none of that matters. Like no one actually cares that he's dying. They just care of what will happen after
It's
it.
so dystopic, yeah.
Yes, a very dystopian setting. Capitalism ruling the world in an iron fist, in which people have become so vain that they would sell their organs and do this and get all these surgeries that they can't afford, and literally, sign their life away for genetic perfection. Yeah. Does that really mean anything?
I mean, like, I like money, but guys, calm down.
Calm down.
You can afford bread.
You can afford bread.
Isn't that enough?
She's just a single mother, and now she's on live TV. That was an amazing sequence. I like the actual opera. They build up to the opera throughout the entire thing. The opera. Yeah,
we get an actual, like, Italian opera scene.
And everything that goes on in that opera is great. I liked the song of people being ushered into the opera with, like, whoever that guy was. It's singing and dancing down the aisle, and he gets on the stage, and you get all of the different testimonials of how Jinko has helped them all. And it was this absolute mania, and the atmosphere of the movie is really well captured in a scene like that, where you have this dissonance of people dressed in these fancy outfits, from another time entirely, but they cast these really gross looking people, and they're very despicable, and the music is this, like, very much like this mania of different clashing sounds, and then you have, like, this beautiful opera happening in which a woman will stab out her own eyes to make a point. And it just gets literally undercut by the antagonist, who's like, I don't fucking care about that point she's making.
You've also got the announcement, like, this is all part of the show, everyone.
Mm-hmm. It makes you think of a lot of, like, Paul Verhoeven films in a lot of way. Like RoboCop had a lot of this type of dystopian humor, talking about the consumerist mentality and how you will literally strip away your individuality and humanity to achieve some form of perfection or some form of whatever it is.
You mentioned before the word, showmany. It's like very sleazy, diseased kind of circus that this whole film's taking place in.
I'm a big fan. I had some issues. And this is just what happens. These aren't the biggest problems, but it's a lower budgeted film. It just looks terrible. I'm just saying it like that. It just looks terrible. Like the color palette, the saturation, some of the sets, some of the acting is not great. It just looks bad, and that's part of the charm of it. I know, but
I don't want to call it bad because I just feel it's all complimentary.
Yeah, that's the thing of, it's a personal taste thing, and it comes from it having a low budget too. I know that. But at the same time, it has the aesthetic that I describe as someone dunked the camera in a dirty toilet bowl, and I know that works in a way too.
If this film looked like this and was joyless, then I would have a problem.
Yes, it's so that's the thing. A lot of the issues that could come up from lower production or lower budget can go away if the film has a soul. If the film is joyous, especially if it's a musical.
In a weird way, now this is reminding me of when we did Poultrygeist, where I'd seen that film twice before. Then we did it on the podcast, and I kind of came to the realization, like, oh, this film's not actually quite as good as I remembered it, but there's so much passion in it that still kind of redeems it.
Yeah. Same with Cannibal the Musical, right? Where
Well, I really love that one, but
no,
yeah.
but it has so much passion. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter that
Yeah.
it looks like it was filmed for $2.
It
Uh,
was, university break.
yeah, no, exactly. Like the context matters, but I had to bring it up. Like I hate how it looks in a lot of. There's so many scenes where I'm just like, I love the family portraits that are holograms that stick out of the walls. Like I love a lot of the production design details. It's just that fucking color grading and lighting. It's just fucking everyone's skin is blown out. Like everyone looks like like someone needed to focus the camera lens a little bit more. I'm just
Mm.
like lip syncing is all over the place in this, noticeably so. They couldn't get another take with that.
I think I did notice a bit of lip sync
They
issues.
couldn't get another take. You know who nailed it the most? Paris Hilton, obviously. She nailed it the most with the lip syncing. She got it. There were one or two songs I don't care for, and this is something that you wouldn't know, but I do.
Now I'll know it.
The mixing of the audio in the songs is very, or I don't know, it's very weird because I've listened to the soundtrack more than I've watched the movie.
Yeah.
I'm on the bus or whatever. Oh, I feel like Repo. I'll just listen to the Repo.
Not for this, but I've had that
Soundtrack.
happen a couple of times where I'd listen to like a soundtrack of something, then I'd watch and like, this is slightly different.
It is, and it's the mixing in this case where since it's the movie version, I guess, even then they're just whole songs like without interstitial dialogue that the actual instrumentation is pushed way down and it's all of the vocals are pushed way up like they're much more front and center, the vocals, or the actual music itself is very much at the back of everything. Like it's much lower and less punch you in the face, the actual music. I had this on my sound system playing it at a pretty decent volume, and I was just noticing like, oh man, I'm so used to this when I listen to it, from the soundtrack. The actual instrumentation is pretty leveled or even a bit louder than the vocals, and it doesn't have that punch to it in the actual movie version. So I'd recommend.
And is that soundtrack like for the movie, or is that from like the theater?
No, it's from the movie. I'm talking about the
Okay.
movie version,
Right.
where they've just mixed it differently. Like, not all of the songs per se are on the movie soundtrack because
Yeah.
basically everything's a song. So you'll get your proper, like, this is a song from beginning to end, but like the interstitial little singing bits are not there. And there are one or two actual legitimate songs that are in the movie that aren't on the movie soundtrack, which I find deeply confusing. I'm like,
It's always weird when that happens.
it's one of those things where literally on the movie's soundtrack, you go from Blind Mag stabbing out her eyes to the daughter singing to her dead dad, being like, be still. And I'm like, there's whole sections of other songs between those two things. And like, and this is something that is a great compliment to the music. You can listen to the soundtrack and know what the story is. Like, you can just listen to the songs. You don't need, like, now you've watched the movie, but like, you don't need the little prologue of, the comic book to understand, because the lyrics are telling you everything you need to know of this world, these characters, their motivations, who they are to one another. It does a really great job of, you can just listen to the songs themselves to know what the narrative is. And that's the joy of having it be a cinematic experience. You have to give it that extra boost than if it was on stage, say, where the stage version, I imagine, you just have the songs be the experience to let the audience know what the setting is, because I don't know if the stage. I know nothing about the stage version of this, honestly. But I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
I don't know if they have someone just coming out and telling you what the prologue tells you in this movie. It's like, oh well, there was a while back, and this happened.
So
this happened.
Was the thought I mentioned earlier correct? Did we go to university with people that really loved this film?
Yes, I knew people who hated this film too. This is a love or hate it type of thing, and I was actually thinking you were going to hate this. I was watching this last night, and I'm like, I think Bartek won't like this, but I'm glad that you did enjoy this. This is one where
kind of similar to me last week. I'm like, I don't know if Ryan would be into this, and it's like, no, I loved it.
I loved it. But I did have a great enjoyment of revisiting this. I didn't love it as much, and maybe because I've been listening to the soundtrack so much that I was just noticing little things that I prefer just as a listen on the sound system or my headphones, and just kind of visualize a lot of stuff rather than what I actually got on the film version of it. And also, I have the joy of just being able to press skip for a song I don't like,
True, yeah.
which is true. And I will mention some of the differences of the soundtrack with some of the songs. There are more grave robber songs in the soundtrack that aren't in the movie, and they are songs that depict him as one of the most gross people ever, and they aren't in the movie. And I'm like, they say pacing issues was the reason why. I think they kind of knew that these songs were pushing it a bit too much for this character. Like, he's into necrophilia in these songs.
Cool.
He's also kind of like a pedophile in these songs. Like, he's trying to get sexual relations out of this teenage girl.
Now he's my favorite character for sure. Yeah.
Paris Hilton has more in those songs as well. Like, there's whole back and forths about how she's trying to get drugs off of him. Like, there's more of that. It's like, so that's kind of fun.
I think that was in the credits. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, I'm all out.
I'm all out. Yeah. Weirdly enough, the soundtrack version does not have the end song, like where he's directly talking to you at the end. It doesn't have that. It ends on the dad dying song. And that's it. Like, what a weird way to end. Because that's not how it goes. But all right, I guess that's it. One filmmaking thing that bugs me. The film ends very awkwardly. He's singing directly to camera, the grave robber, and then he runs out of song. And then he kind of stands there for a moment, and then he turns and walks off and just does a slow fade to black, and then the credits stop and gives you a little mid-credit scene the
siblings,
of the siblings now being in charge, and then they promise you that there'll be more adventures in this world. Just a bit awkward, you know? Just a bit awkward. I feel like you have to have one or the other.
Yeah, the scene with the grave robber kind of feels like, you're closing the book. It's like the end of the story.
It's the end of the story. And also the slow fade to black was a bit awkward, and it like faster with the fade to black, Mr. Saw director. You can do faster than that. I know you can. I've watched a Saw film once.
Yeah, we'd say cut it out, but maybe you should saw it out.
Mark it up. Mark it up. But
this was a good film that we should have done in spooky month of musical year.
I was thinking that too. Like, hence at the beginning, like, woo.
It's two listening people suggestions in a row.
Don't worry. I have a musical pick for spooky month.
Ooh,
don't worry.
Shock Treatment.
Okay, well, no, but that is a musical I would love to talk about one day because it's such a nightmare. Shock Treatment.
Still haven't seen it. I have it on DVD.
There's one good song.
Is that the bitch in the kitchen?
Well, I won't give it away. We may cover it this year, so we will get around to Shock Treatment one day. But I recommend Repo the Genetic Opera. If you're into this type of thing especially, you know that it's for you. And there's a lot of humor in this too. Like, it's got some...
Oh, it is a dark comedy, yeah.
It's a dark comedy. It has some just iconic songs. It just has a very... it has a personality. And I want more musicals, and maybe not of this style, but like, I can't recall a musical more recently that kind of fits this mold, and maybe I'm not paying attention enough. But what I was discussing at the beginning, like every decade or every era or so, there's like that one music I'm like, yeah, I love that. But I can't recall in like 2010s per se, one that really is like this for myself. That's a movie, at least. There's plenty of just stage musicals, like the Heathers musical is really good. But that is a recommendation from me. Would you recommend this to people?
No, I definitely would. Yeah, see if it's for you. It's a very fun film. You'll probably like at least one song from it. I mean, there's a bit of variety there. It's fun. Yeah,
Group watch would be recommended even more highly.
I'm keen, yeah. Get some vibes in from people in the room.
I've never done a big group watch. I've mainly done it with one or two other people in the room. I've never done a movie night with Repo, but if I ever do a movie night of musicals, this would be the ender of the night. Like, this is the one where you end a night on this, because I think of it as such a nighttime, like late night movie. If you're putting on something like, if I had to put on like a triple feature of musicals with this, I don't know, you would have to, like, Rocky Horror's got to be there, of course. Maybe Little Shop of Horrors too. And then you got this there. I don't know. This one, you don't start the night with this.
You can start the night with Reaper Madness.
Yeah, Reefer Madness would be a great start. Because that's a lot of daytime as well. I just think this is an end of the night movie because everything's so late at night in this film. Like everyone's visiting graves at like 1 o'clock at night.
Yeah, was there even any sunshine in it?
No.
There you go.
There's no sun in this world.
I watched it at 8 a.m., but yeah.
There you are. Well, fuck. He's having breakfast while watching this. Just
no, he wasn't even dressed yet.
He was naked when watching this.
Does Rachel like the film?
Rachel enjoys the film. She recommended it after all. So no, she hate recommended it. She's
I mean,
have we had many hate recommendations? I'm not too sure.
From listening people?
Or even from us. I don't think I've gone out of my way to recommend films where I'm like, I hate this movie, let's watch it. I've done ones where it's like Bicentennial Man, where it's like I have a lot of complicated feelings and I want to see if they change.
I've done a couple where it was like, I want to give this film a second chance, like Savages was one of my early ones.
That's fair. Okay, maybe you've done them a bit more than I have, but I have to look over the catalogue and went, oh yeah, I recommended that because I hated it.
Yeah, I've done some joke ones. Like I picked Ice Age because I thought it'd be funny.
And it was funny. Now it is your turn to pitch a film our way, and it's a Hollywood production.
Yes,
correct?
It is. Yeah.
And will it be a hate one, or will it be one that Bartek's never seen, or one that he's so aware of? We'll have to find out.
I was actually about to call back to something, but you kind of repeated it. Earlier this episode, you mentioned like sometimes we pick things that we've both seen. Sometimes we pick things that neither of us have seen. I've actually got two films, and I want to ask you, Ryan, do I pick the familiar one for both of us, or the one that neither of us have seen? What are you thinking?
You're putting the choice in my hands.
Yeah, this is like when the Tyrannosaur thing.
The neither of us have seen.
You wanted to go with the one neither of us have seen?
Yes.
So that one is the 2004, and actually you mentioned this film not too long ago, 2004 film Mean Creek.
Mean Creek.
Yeah.
Which... I remember you mentioned this because an actor is in it of some sort. Do we want to say who it is now?
The actor is Josh Peck.
Joshua Peck.
Yeah.
Just want to hear me do the Peck impression again for a whole episode.
Well, I've mentioned, like, I only know one scene from this film that I saw way back when. I've always been curious, like, what is that whole film about?
I have no clue what this is, so all I know is Josh Peck's in it. And Bartek knows a scene from it. I don't know anything. This will be a real wild journey, I hope.
Also, just to get the laugh out there, the other film was School of Rock, which we mentioned already this episode.
Oh, well, I do like Joan Cusack at the best of times. So
I haven't seen that film in so long, but so many people just compare me. Like literally 2 weeks ago, there was a guy working on our fence with the neighbor, and he had to talk to me because of some issue. And he was like, oh, you look like... And he actually said Jack Black's character name in that film, and no one's ever compared me to the character name before. I wonder if
they compared you to his character name or the fake name he's using. Because he's using Ned Schneebly throughout the
he called me Mr. Schneebly.
Yes.
I'm like, well, what's that?
His friend's name.
I was like, oh, when he told me it was School of Rock, I'm like, oh, I get that all the time.
We're not talking about School of Rock. But I have one statement, and then we've got to move on. Sarah Silverman's in that movie as like the killjoy girlfriend, who's like, "What you're doing is amoral, and that's bad." And it's so funny to see Sarah Silverman for one in movies. She's a very strange screen presence.
She kissed Henry.
Yes, and in that as the non-comedic thing when this was at the height of her being the funny woman. I just think that's very funny in its own way of like hiring one of the funny women of that era to not be funny. In a movie of funny people, like Joan Cusack's the funny woman in that movie, even though she's the killjoy love interest. She's funnier than Sarah Silverman. And you know what? Here's another statement. I've said it before. School of Rock, Joan Cusack's just playing her character from My Blue Heaven.
Yeah, I remember we talked about
that. It's basically the same character. It might as well be the same woman.
Obviously, School of Rock has musical stuff in it, but is it a musical? I can't remember.
It has... No. Not really. I'm sure there's a musical adaptation of it, but...
I'd still pick it for musical here. I'll do it some other time.
We're done. Make sure to rate and review our podcast if you have not already, and you can recommend films to us as well. You can hit us up on our email address, which is...
Our email address is spitandpolished@gmail.com.
Let us know your film recommendations or your thoughts on things that we have discussed here. You can follow our social medias of Facebook and Twitter, Spit and Polish Presents, in which you can interact and chat with us and let us know things, and you can pitch your film recommendations on those as well if you're not going to email.
And
that's okay.
YouTube comments as well. We recently got a comment on our episode on Santa Claus is a Stinker from, I think, someone who is French, and they gave us a lot of context about the film. Like, it's been a while since we watched that film, so it wasn't fresh in my head, but they had a lot to say, and it really kind of grounded all that.
I'm glad that we know why Santa Claus is a stinker now, and that it's really funny. It's really funny that he stunk up that place. He stunk it up real good. He put his bottom on the ground. That's what the French call butt. Bottom. And
no, that's Minions.
Oh, Minions. We're never doing one of those movies. I'm telling you now.
It's never going to be a Bartek or Ryan pick, but there's another.
It could be you.
There's another version of picks.
You could be the one, people, to recommend the Trey Parker film, Despicable Me 3.
I haven't seen that one. I only saw the first two.
You could be the one that we see a South Park guy do not one of their own productions for a change, which is, isn't that strange? Like, he did a Despicable Me. I don't think at this point I've ever seen them two not do things that aren't their own.
I think I brought it up before, but weren't they not in charge of basketball?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. But like, that was so long ago where it's like, oh, that's the start of their big career. You can imagine them doing that, but like,
I have a DVD of that. I still haven't watched it.
In the 2010s, do they do anything that isn't them in charge?
No,
even like minor voice stuff?
It's like Despicable Me 3 and basketball.
But one of them said, I'm doing Despicable Me 3.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other one cried.
Yeah. Remember, guys, we're not going to do Minions unless you pick it. So just remember, pics or it didn't happen.
You just send minion feet pics to our email. and written in blood text, you know. That's all they write, you know.
You know, banana.